David here with figbootonpens. Today I'm going to be taking a look at a very popular pen. It's a favorite of many collectors who really strive to acquire all of the colors and variations of this pen. And the pen I'm talking about is the Pilot Vanishing Point. So what I'm going to do today is go over some of the parts and features of the Vanishing Point, talk about some of the things I care for and some of the things I don't care for. Then I'll provide some measurements, some size comparisons, and then provide a writing sample. Pilot began producing this pen back in 1964, and it was really designed for ease of use and was the very first retractable fountain pen on the market. Originally it was called the capless, and it had one of the most complex inner mechanisms ever produced on a fountain pen to date. And in 1973, the name was changed to the Vanishing Point. And over the 50 or so years that the Vanishing Point has been produced, not much has changed in regard to the design. Many more models have been produced, mainly colors and variations, but the design for the most part has stayed the same. Now, I actually have three Vanishing Points in my collection. One I purchased from Anderson Pens, my first one, then I purchased another one through Mass Drop, and then I purchased a third one through an estate sale. And all three of them came in different boxes. So quickly I wanted to show you each of the different boxes because it could potentially vary depending on where you purchased the pen from. The one I purchased from Anderson had this nice box here, and we'll just quickly take a look at these and then we'll go over the parts of the pen in a bit. This is the gunmetal gray version, and it came in this nice clamshell box. Then the one I purchased through Mass Drop had this more generic box, and this is the blue version of the Vanishing Point, and just a kind of a plain clamshell box. But then the one that I purchased at the estate auction is an older box that I don't believe they use anymore, but is one of the coolest boxes of any fountain pen I own. So I wanted to kind of take a closer look at this box. And that it looks like this. And inside there is just a generic warranty card, and then their typical user guide that's included in most Pilot pens for filling instructions and things like that. I have my little number 330 tag from the auction that I purchased this at. Quick note on this auction. I talked about it a lot in my Mont Blanc 149 review about this auction that I went to. Literally hundreds of pens that were available, all new and unused and in the box, and just an amazing collection. And before I went, I actually targeted a number of pens, maybe about 4 pens, and that I was very pleased that I was able to purchase each of the 4 pens that I had targeted for significantly less than retail pricing. But the one regret I had was at one point of the auction, they brought out like a loose box full of various different pens, and basically called people up and said, okay, we'll start bidding, and however much you bid, then you can choose as many pens as you want for that price. So someone bid, and I looked down and I just really couldn't see anything that I really cared for. And the auction was kind of happening quick, and I just didn't see anything that I cared for. And the person next to me won the auction for $20. So he got to choose as many pens as he wanted for $20 each. And the moment the auction was done and I saw him win, he reached in and grabbed a Lamy Dialogue 3 that was sitting there loose in the box that I hadn't noticed. So that's a pen that typically retails for $300 to $350, and it was one of the silver ones. And so he was able to pick that up for $20. So I think that was the steal of the auction. And basically, even though I was very pleased with the ones I purchased, I was kind of kicking myself later that I hadn't noticed that Dialogue 3 and could have had one for almost free, a very significant discount, $20. Not a bad price. But I did end up with this Vanishing Point, and it comes in a very, very cool box that looks like this. And that I'll go ahead and take it out of the box. And you'll see here that it is kind of hovering inside this box. It's kind of pressed between two sheets of plastic. You can kind of hear the plastic here. And the plastic's a little sticky as well, which helps it stay in here. But it's just a very cool illusion that it's just kind of hovering there. And you unclip this and then open it up. Yep, and the pen almost falls out. And you have this black matte version of the Vanishing Point. You know what, when we take a look at the parts, let's use the blue one here just because it's a little easier to see the parts. As I mentioned previously, this is a capless pen with a retractable nib. That the end is matte black. Most of the other versions have a solid silver metal on the end. I find those to be just slightly slicker, but you're not necessarily holding on to it. But I kind of like the matte black personally more. And that you can see here that it's slightly indented on one side. It's slightly indented on this side, and that really doesn't have much to do in regard to, at first I thought that was so that when you were writing, it wouldn't, the rounded edge wouldn't hit the paper, but when the nib is extended, that doesn't really even come close to hitting the paper. So it's just a style choice. And then you have the clip, and the nib is on the clip side of the pen. And you can see here that the clip actually has some indentations right here, and that is where you hold the pen. The clip has a decent amount of spring to it and is very easy to use, but that indentation is where you're actually going to hold the pen. And at first I thought that this might be a hindrance and it might be kind of annoy you to where you're holding the pen right there in the middle of the grip. Very similar to the Lamy Dialogue 3. But you know, I really find it comfortable, and I find that the grip actually kind of guides you to where you need to be holding this pen. But if it really does force you to hold it in a specific place right here at the indentations. So if you find yourself wanting to hold it a little bit further down, you can, or further up you can, but it might not be as comfortable as in the kind of the sweet spot of the grip where it's designed for you to hold it. That this pen is very well balanced, but it is it's a little heavier on the bottom. And so it's not very top heavy, and the top section of the pen is the lightest part of the pen, but it is very comfortable to hold, and it feels very solid in your hand. It's a very well manufactured and very solid materials, and high quality materials. The barrel tapers slightly upward, and then you have two black rings here is where you actually access the cartridge. And then right here, it's a little hard to see, but it does say Pilot Japan, which is the only branding that's on the entire pen. And then the barrel tapers down to a very black matte, or a black matte, at least on this model, end and an elongated plunger. You actually push the plunger and out comes the nib. It's a little hard to see in here, but there is an actual door. We'll see if we can kind of see it. No, it's not very easy to see, but what happens is there's an actual door, and when you click, the door actually comes down and the nib extends. And then when you unclick it, the nib retracts and the door comes back up. And that's basically to help keep the nib dry so it doesn't dry out, or keep it away from the air so it doesn't dry out. And that this click is just very satisfying. And I find myself clicking it a lot whenever I use this pen. And it just has a very high cool factor because people aren't necessarily expecting this to be a fountain pen. If you hand this to someone to use, they think it's a ballpoint and they click it, and then they're like, uh-oh, what's going on here? What's this thing on the other end? I don't recognize that. So the barrel actually unscrews, and inside we have the nib unit, which you can extract. And you need to do this in order to fill the pen. You do not fill the pen with the nib inside of the pen. And here you have the nib unit, and this is a cartridge converter. It can take proprietary Pilot cartridges, and that it also can accept a Pilot Con 20 converter or a Con 50 converter. And you can pull this converter out, and so it's very easy to clean. and that when it's extracted like this, you can get a better look at the nib. Here's a close-up picture of it. It's much smaller than a normal nib, and that it can feel like a bit of a nail at times, in spite of being 18 karat gold. Now, all three of these Pilot Vanishing Points are mediums. My black matte one actually came with a fine nib, and I found personally I prefer mediums, and I found it to be a little too fine for my tastes. And so actually on Reddit, during the pen exchange group, I found someone who was looking to, they had a medium and was looking to exchange it for a fine, and so that we swapped nibs, and so that worked out well for both of us. So, as for negatives about this pen, folks might not care for the fact that the grip is for the most part forced, and that for the most part you need to hold it in a specific place, even though you can, but it might be slightly uncomfortable. And some people might not care for the fact that you really don't get a big, fat, pretty nib, that you have something that's a little smaller and subdued. As far as some of the things I really like about this pen is, it's really solid and really well made. It looks very cool and modern, especially for a design over 50 years old. And it's one of those pens that if you don't like this color or the black matte or the black, there's many other colors out there that look very, very neat. On top of that, it's a fantastic writer. It's very easy to disassemble and clean, and comes in lots of varieties, like I said. It's also very practical, and the clicking mechanism is convenient. You can basically pick up this pen and with a quick click begin using it. You're not having to uncap the pen, post it, or do whatever. You can just pick it up and use it, so it's very convenient. So there you have the Pilot Vanishing Point. So what I'm going to do now is show you some measurements, some size comparisons, and then provide a writing sample. So here we go with some size comparisons for the Pilot Vanishing Point. Here we go, there is the matte black version. And just to get a better look at it, then here is the blue version, and then here is the gunmetal gray version. I actually like all three of these. But in regard to comparisons, here it is with a Montblanc 146, and then here it is with a Pilot Custom Heritage 92, and then just because I mentioned it a few times, here it is with a Lamy Dialogue. So that it's similar in size to the 92. And then in regard to some less expensive pens, here it is with a Diamond 580 AL and a Pilot Metropolitan, which it's fairly similar in size to. And then here it is with a Lamy All-Star. We'll actually set that on its side. There you go. So here, I'll actually show the click. And we have here the Pilot Vanishing Point. And this is a medium 18 karat nib, and the ink is Montegrappa blue. And this is an ink that I actually also picked up at the estate auction. It comes in this bottle. The label isn't necessarily anything to write home about, but it's a nice little bottle and easy to fill. I actually like the rings around here. It has a nice little 1912 up here, which is the year that Montegrappa was founded. But it's nice to have these little grooves here because it makes it really easy to twist and turn. There's times when ink can kind of cause a lid to get a little stuck, and so it's nice to have a little extra grip there. This is what the ink looks like. It's kind of a light royal blue. In comparison, it kind of compares favorably to St. DuPont Royal Blue, or either, and also like Faber-Castell Royal Blue. So some of the kind of lighter royal blues, even something like Noodler's Polar Blue, it's fairly similar to that, in the same family. So here we go with the rest of the writing sample. This nib has a very distinct feeling to it. There's really not a lot of give to this nib, even though it's an 18K nib that, you know, it's very firm. It's a bit like writing with a nail, and I think it's because it's such a small nib and the tines are just not very long. They're rather short. So you have to apply quite a bit of pressure if you're going to get any line variation, and line variation isn't what this pen is all about. And in regard to wetness, it's medium wet pen. It's not a gusher by any means. I know especially on the fines that it's a little bit on the dry side. And in regard to reverse writing, it's actually rather pleasant. Well, slightly scratchy, but it can get the job done. And in regard to fast writing, I've never had a problem with this nib keeping up. You know, the Pilot Vanishing Point is a very, very solid pen, and one that has a very unique look and feel to it. You know, it has a very unique feeling to the nib as well. That if you were able to somehow put this on a different pen and I couldn't tell exactly what pen it was in, and you blindfolded me, I could tell instantaneously that, or instantly, that it was the Vanishing Point nib. It just has a very distinct feel to it. That if you like these reviews, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. I appreciate you watching, and I'll talk to you later.